What is up, everybody? It is Og here, back with another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how I plan to go 1 to 60 with my Blood Elf Paladin when pre-patch drops, and hopefully get the world first Blood Elf Paladin at 60. I'm going to be doing it all live on Twitch at twitch.tv/Arleus, so definitely come hang out during the pre-patch. It should be a ton of fun. But basically, guys, there's only 2 weeks for pre-patch, and so I want to share every single tip and trick that I can with you guys. I want to share all of my consume lists, all of my enchant lists, all the research and prep that I've done for pre-patch to level up as quickly as possible. I want to share with you guys as well, so you guys can go as fast as possible to 60 and hopefully hit it before TBC drops. With that in mind, there's going to be a lot of information in this video. And so definitely check out the timestamps down below in the description so you guys can jump to what part of the video you guys want to. And then also in the future, if you're reviewing it down the line, so you guys can just jump there immediately and jump right into whatever you're interested in. There will be a lot of information that is probably not going to be for everyone because it's going to be specific to solo grinding, dungeon grinding, boosting, mob tagging, etc. And so that will be specific to that individual kind of leveling strategy. But there's also going to be a lot of information that is overarching, such as changes in TBC and pre-patch to the actual leveling and how experience works, stuff like that. Then there's going to be the consume list, enchant list, add-on lists, and stuff that will probably be useful to everybody. So hopefully the timestamps can kind of help you guys figure out exactly what you want to look at and kind of hone your attention into those specific parts. I'm going to start off the video going over the high level information about changes with pre-patch and stuff that's going to be really important just to have in the back of your mind so you guys can level as quickly as possible. Then we're going to be jumping into the individual tips and tricks for various strategies such as solo leveling, duo grinding with friends, dungeon grinding, mob tagging, boosting, etc. And then from there, we'll go into the actual resources. So the bunch of Google Docs that might be able to help you guys consume lists, enchant lists. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Hopefully this helps you level up as quickly as possible. And hopefully I see you guys in Twitch on pre-patch. Let's jump into it. So before we get started, I want to go over some just changes with pre-patch and just some ways you need to think about leveling in the pre-patch that are going to have a massive impact on how you can actually level and kind of serve as the foundation for why we're doing what we're doing. There's a lot of changes and just overall things that are really good to know for leveling through the pre-patch and then TBC. And so I want to share those with you guys before we actually jump into the videos and the explanations of what we're going to do at various levels and everything like that. So number one, XP is completely different. You need about 20% less XP on average per level. This starts, I believe, at level 20, and it starts off with about 10% less and scales up to about 25% at 59. You also get more experience from quests. You get about 40% more experience from quests as you go through and do them. So between those two, it's going to be a lot easier to do leveling with questing just because you're going to need less experience per level, and you're also going to get much more experience from quests. As far as dungeon lockouts, we're not 100% sure on what is going to be happening with that. Currently, there is no cap on the beta or on PTR, but that's because of testing purposes. And so when it comes time for the actual, pre-patch to come out, I don't know if we're still going to have that 30 instance lockout. So we'll be touching on that a lot more later and what we can do in terms of the lockouts, whether it's 30, whether it's 50, 70, unlimited, etc. You can summon someone out of your starting location. And so that's something really important to know and something you might want to pre-plan if you're on a very large server. If you're on a very large server, there's a very good chance there's going to be a lot of people at the lower levels. As soon as it launches, and there's going to be a ton of people swarming the starting areas, they have something called dynamic spawning in TBC. And basically what that means is that if there's more people in one location, more mobs will spawn faster, where it almost seems like a hyperspawn, but really it's just dynamic spawning. And they also have said that they will be doing layering in TBC. Not sure if they're going to do it on pre-patch. Even if they have both of those, though, there's a chance that for some like quest boss mobs and things like that, you're still going to be waiting for them to spawn. So just keep that in mind. It's, important either to jump out ahead of the competition or to get to a less crowded area. Auction houses are going to be closed from the 14th until pre-patch launch. And this is kind of why I'm focusing on jumping out in this video. Later on in the video, we're going to have basically a list of a bunch of different things you might want to get from the auction house now. And so that's why I'm really trying to get out this video early so you can get those before the auction house goes down. If the auction house does go down, check out your local discords for your server. There may be some kind of auction house set up. Pagel, for example, is doing one on the Pagel Pug News Network. And so maybe your server will be doing something similar where you guys can find a makeshift auction house in the meantime. Consecrate now scales with spell power at 95% instead of 33%. This is going to allow for the Pally AoE farms, but is also going to allow you to do more damage while leveling up if you're able to get spell power gear. And so we're going to be going over some gear recommendations and sets and things like that for future runs and everything. And so that's going to be important to know, that Consecrate will scale much better spell power than it does right now. Mob AoE cap is in for mages, so that's going to impact the amount of mages that can do certain farms, whether it be SM or Mara. If you're on the Alliance, Paladins will now be able to do SM, so it won't be as big of a deal for SM, but for Mara, there will definitely be less mages doing it, and hopefully a lot less bots, so that should hopefully be very good. MP5 Calc has changed, and so in TBC, the MP5 Calc is a little bit different. And Spirit, basically the way to think about it, guys, when you're figuring out mana per 5, or Spirit, every 1/4 point of Spirit gives you 1 MP5. Sorry, every 4 points of Spirit, not 1/4. And then the Paladins now have taunt, which means you can now easily tank instances. Previously, you had to rely on Righteous Fury, hopefully with buffing other mobs, or buffing other people in your group and things like that. But now that you have taunt, you can tank other instances a lot easier. So leveling up through dungeons as a Pally tank, you can have Pally DPS, you can have Pally healers, you can literally have a group of 5 Paladins and be perfectly fine in dungeons. So definitely something to keep in mind moving forward. Let's start off with tips and tricks for the different leveling strategies. The first leveling strategy is going to be questing. This is going to be what most people do. I recommend grabbing a friend or maybe even 2 friends. Now there's 2 reasons for this. One, you want to get ahead of the competition. There's going to be a lot of people leveling in pre-patch. It's going to be similar to classic launch with the amount of people that are going to be leveling. And so a lot of people are going to be doing the quest, and you're going to run into a lot of competition potentially, especially if you're on a larger server, or maybe even a PvP server, it could run into more issues than on a non-PvE server. And so having extra people for the quest is really going to help you get through the quest quicker. The second thing is that because of the experience changes, you no longer need to worry about the grinding aspect of leveling. Formerly in Classic and things like that, you would have to grind a good bit on individual mobs to be able to access the quest in future zones. Otherwise, you'd be too low of a level. With TBC and with pre-patch, you won't need to do that because of the experience you're going to get from quests. And so you can sacrifice that individual mob killing experience for the increased quest speed that you'll be able to attain with multiple people. One big trick that the pros use that really helps people when they're starting to level up and things like that: kill while dragging mobs. And so hunters can do this best, where they can shoot and then move a little bit and then shoot again and then move a little bit. And you want to drag them to the next mob, or you want to drag them to a quest turn in or a quest pickup of an item or things like that. But make sure you're hitting the mobs and then moving with them. The longest aspect of leveling is actually the running when you don't have any movement and enhancing talents or movement, mount speed or anything like that. And so running around is really going to cause you to take a long time. With that in mind, also pick up Enchants. And so we'll be going over the Enchants later, but something like minor run speed on boots is going to be huge. You can have a tune run into these new zones. They aren't barricaded to the people that are currently level 60. So if you have gear prepped, you can have a friend run over and trade all of that gear to your new tune, including minor run speed on boots, an overpowered weapon, overpowered gear with Enchants and things like that. And it will really, really speed up your leveling process. Speaking of the Enchants on gear, you actually get an much larger benefit from primary stats such as intellect, spirit, and things like that at the lower level. So much so that spirit is really going to increase your mana per 5 and allow you to have a lot less downtime. And so this is going to be a way to really speed up your grinding. If you want to, you can also try to find a mage. Mages, I would recommend, honestly, if you're trying to look for a good gold making strategy, run to starter zones and sell food and water for low levels. It's quick and easy for mages to make, but then you're able to get that food and water, and you're going to be able to have that in your bag, so you have a lot less downtime, especially because you don't want to just stack up you don't want to have to buy a bunch from the innkeepers and things like that, and then you out-level it, then you have to get new waters and things like that. It'll be very easy just to have a mage give you some water, and then you can fly through the levels that way. Then once you hit level 5, there's some consumes you're able to use. Again, I'll have these consume lists later, just like the enchants, so I'll dive into them more in depth there. But definitely keep in mind that you can use consumes at a pretty low level, and it might really help you level up. Last tip that I recommend for solo leveling and questing and things like that, specifically, is to take advantage of dying. I know it sounds crazy, but below level 10, you don't get any res sickness. And so there's actually some really overpowered strategies that you can use to teleport to future questing zones, such as Razor Hill, or at least to be able to get back to this quest giver faster. If you're just going to sit there and run all the way over, it's going to take some time, but because you won't get any res sickness, the only penalty you'll have is a 25% durability loss, which you can quickly repair with a really cheap amount of gold or resources. Some people are going to want to dungeon grind to level up, and while I do not recommend this strategy, I do recommend doing dungeons once that have a lot of quests, because the quests from dungeons give a substantially increased amount of experience. So if you're doing a dungeon with a lot of quests, such as like BRD or something like that, you'll be able to fly through the levels if you do the dungeons with a group. I don't recommend spamming dungeons though, because you don't get any extra experience from mobs, so you're going to be missing out on a lot of that questing experience. One add-on I do recommend definitely picking up if you are going to be doing the dungeon quests, even if you're solo leveling or something like that, Atlas Quest. And shout out to Metagoblin for this. I did not know about this add-on before he made his video. And so Atlas Quest is a add-on that will basically show you where you can get the quests for each of these dungeons before you actually do the dungeons. You can go and pick up the quest, then go to the dungeon and get a lot of experience from that. Like I said though, just dungeon grinding probably isn't great, just because you're not going to be having, you have 20% less experience on average per level, but you're not going to be getting as much experience per the runs, and so it'll probably take longer than if you just were to quest. If you do want to dungeon grind though, I recommend stacking up as many Pallies and mages as possible. Consecrate obviously will be able to do a lot more damage. Healing from gear will now scale to have plus spell power on it as well. So Pallies, even with plus healing gear, will be able to get a good amount of plus spell power, which means that their Consecrate will be able to do a decent amount of damage. Mages obviously will still be able to do very good AoE. And so if you are dungeon grinding, you can still do up to probably about 10 mobs at once and still get the maximum effect even with the AoE cap. So if you are going to be doing dungeon grinding, get a group of mages and paladins if you want to go as efficiently as possible, and you should be able to mow through about 10 mobs at a time, flying through an instance. So a popular leveling strategy is probably going to be mob tagging. Now I want to focus on exactly how mob tagging works so you guys can make sure you do it properly. But basically the idea here is that you're able to tag the mobs and get full experience. This can be done using level 60s to help you, or using people that are around your level. There's two different ways to do the mob tagging. The first way is to kill it with a pet, and the second way is to kill it with a person who is close enough to the mob's level where the mob is green to them. So let's talk about the pet way first. You need to have someone in your group. You can see on my mini map, I have somebody in my group in the same zone, but not close enough to steal experience from me. It doesn't matter what level they are, but they must be online. So they could be level 1, they could be level 60, but if we're in Westfall, they need to be in Westfall, but not close enough to steal experience. You then need to tag the mob, and then a hunter's pet or a warlock's pet needs to kill the mob without anything else hitting it. So you can see here, I wand, get aggro, and I make sure that I tag the mob, and then a hunter's pet will kill it, and I'll get full experience for the mob. Now, if you go the alternative way, you can actually have people your level actually killing the mobs. And so this is going to be a very popular level strategy for people who have really kind of prepped things. And the way that this works is, let's say, for example, we're killing mobs that are level 25. And so we have 3 level 30 mages who are helping us. Because the mobs are green to those level 30 mages, they're able to Arcane Explosion to kill the mobs. So if we aggro up all those level 25 mobs and we get aggro with, say, a Consecrate, and then they Arcane Explosion the mobs to death, we will get full experience because the mobs are green. The exact same thing works once you're level like 55, right? And you're killing a level 55 mob. The mob is green to level 60s, which means that 60s can kill them. That's why this strategy worked, because I was level 56, I guess, killing level 55 mobs. I Arcane Explosion them. You can see I'm not in a group at all. But because I got aggro on the mobs, when the other people killed them, I got full experience as if I was the only person killing that mob. And so this is a really good way that you can mob tag as well. And so if you have staged level 30 mages and you still have time to get people to level 30 and you have a bunch of level 30 mages ready to help you out, you can mob tag mobs in the mid 20s and then they can Arcane Explosion them down to take them out that way, kind of like these people are just running through all these mobs right now. Thank you again, by the way, to all those people who helped out with that grind. That was crazy. Barring any changes from Blizzard, boosting should be in the game. And a lot of people are going to want to boost up. So I wanted to make this spreadsheet to give you guys the exact rundown of how I would get boosted from 1 to 60 so that you guys can go ahead and you guys can do this if you would like to as well. There's some important things to know about boosting though, so I want to cover those first. First off, the average mob level and your average level of your group compared to that average mob level is incredibly important. Your goal is to get your average group level to be the average mob level -2. Why would you want that? Experience is based on the average group level, and so you want the mob to basically be on the upper end of yellow to orange for you. You don't want it to be red, but you want it to be in the orange and yellow area. That also allows you to have several levels where you can still get really good experience. So with that in mind, here's the average mob levels. This is taken from Wowhead. It's not perfect. It's, some crunch numbers. So it's a rough estimate. Your goal should be roughly to have your average group level be this -2. You also want to have your group be 4 people, not 5. This is a common misconception that 5 people reduces your average group level, so it's better. Not always. While it might help with some of the lower level dungeons, once you get up to the higher dungeons, it's actually better to have 3 boosties with the booster for the most experience. It's just how the boosting formula works. You just got to take my word for it on that front, but I would recommend trying to have 4 people in the group if you're trying to go as fast as possible, and then with those people get the average group level down to this -2. These experience numbers are taken as rough estimates. At the end of the day, everyone's going to have a different average group level, so you're going to get a different amount of experience. But this is a rough estimate based on my history of boosting. I have taken, SM and Mara pools from massive pool counts, whereas the RFC and SFK aren't from as large of pools of data. So, if you want to change these numbers around to be what you think the actual experience would be from a run, feel free. I'm not going to be offended at all. But this is basically just a general guide to try to help you guys. Once we have that, we can take that, we can multiply it by the experience that we're actually going to be getting from each run as a percentage of a level. Now, at the earlier levels, before level 20, experience isn't scaled down, which means it's just the static whatever we got before. However, at level 20, we start getting more experience. And so with SM, for example, we're going to need probably about 15% less experience from all the runs. And once we get to Mara, it's about 20%, and then ZG maybe 23% once we're on the higher end of the level range. And so with that in mind, we can kind of get an idea of how many levels we need per each of these runs, the runs needed with each of the runs, including different strategies. So look at the Mara pool, which can give us an overall kind of idea of how many runs it might take. Obviously, as you can see here, the 135 runs would mean that the daily cap of 30 would be very restrictive and would probably give some more weight to doing something like Mara 500 or doing something like Wailing Caverns, where you can potentially get a little bit more experience than SFK for the Horde. Then we could go for the total cost. Again, you can change these numbers if you want. There's a good chance that runs such as Mara might go up, and on the Horde, maybe SM goes up because there's less mages able to pull it off. Mara definitely will have less mages able to pull it off with the new changes to AoE cap, and maybe even ZG. And so this is, subject to change for sure, and maybe instead of 40, it's 60. So feel free to play around with those numbers. You could save down this file, have a link down below. You can get an idea of a total cost of what it might cost you to go from 1 to 60, so you can have that gold prepped. As far as the time per run, if it's any faster than 15 minutes per run, I put it at 15 minutes per run. If you guys didn't know, you can only do 4 instances per hour, and I know some people are going to be like, no, you can do 5. How it works is that when you leave a dungeon, that's when the timer on the lockout starts, which means you can't do another set of 5 until the end of your first instance. So if our first instance took 12 minutes, we would have to wait until 1 hour and 12 minutes to enter again. So with that in mind, the next hour, and if you're trying to level up as quickly as possible, you're just banging these out back to back to back to back, you will only be able to do 4 per hour at maximum efficiency without getting locked out. So with that in mind, the minimum amount of time is 15 minutes. If it's more than 15, then like the Mara 340 and the Mara 500, especially with the increased time that's going to take for these runs, we can get the time needed. You can see here, you don't save too much time with the Mara 500 as opposed to the Mara 340. Overall, we're looking at about 35 hours. On the Alliance, the only thing I switched out is VC for Van Cleef. I personally call it DM for Deadmines, but people get annoyed when I do that, so VC is in. I personally don't like VC at all. This is a really rough estimate based on talking to some of my friends. I would rather go to Wailing Caverns. There's more mobs You can leave the tunes at the start of the instance. You don't need to worry about dragging them through. There's not paths that respawn throughout the instance or anything like that you have to worry about. I just find that Wailing Caverns is a lot easier personally, but if you want to do Van Cleef, here's some rough estimates. We could see that, Horde and Alliance are coming in pretty similarly, maybe a little bit slower on the Alliance just because Hordes can jump in at level 8 with RFC, which RFC is just phenomenal for experience. Now that we've gone through all of the, leveling strategies and their main components, let's talk about consumables, enchants, gear, add-ons, those kind of things. So as far as consumables goes, here's a list sorted by the level required for various consumables. Now, for leveling up as a paladin, if you're doing consecration farming, you want to be focusing on spell power, intellect, and then spirit if it's a long grind, something like ZF. You don't really need spirit outside of ZF though, just for consecration grinding because you're just going to drink in between pools. But because of the spell power scaling coefficients, you definitely want to be able to maximize your spell power. So for example, we have Brilliant Wizard Oil and we have Great Arcane Elixir. Between these two, we can get 71 spell power just from these two items. Even starting at level 5 though, you can get Minor Wizard Oil, which increases your spell damage by 8. But the big thing to get is Swiftness Potions. Now these are pretty underrated when you think about it, but 50% movement speed for 15 seconds, especially when you're mob tagging, is fantastic. And honestly could provide a massive, massive benefit. Eventually you get up to 20, and then always make sure that you're stacked with mana potions and healing potions as you go. One other potion to kind of point out is Oil of Immolation. This will really help in your ZF farms. Highly recommend that you do ZF as a paladin. I have a video on it on my YouTube. I'll link it up above and down in the description down below. You guys can follow, but you can do it from 40 to 54, and it will be incredible experience. But Oil of Immolation will help a ton in stacking all of this, plus spell damage, elixirs, and everything you can as well will help a ton. But this consumables list should help you, based on your level range, be able to stack up on whatever consumables you want. Let's move over to Enchants. So Enchants, there's a lot of different kind of fields of thought about what people should do. Here's what I recommend. Fiery Weapon immediately at level 1. Put it on a Skinning Dagger or whatever, or Skinning Knife rather. Level 1, it can proc for 40 damage and crit for 60 damage, and it has 6 procs per minute. So the slower the weapon, the better. If you have a two-handed weapon, you definitely want to be using a two-handed weapon leveling up as Ret. This would be incredibly helpful for that. And it will proc a decent bit, especially at the lower levels, to really, really help you speed up your kills. If you're mob tagging, though, you want to focus on Fiery Blaze. So Fiery Blaze is an enchant that you can get through a quest line. It has a 15% chance to proc, and it will inflict 9 to 13 damage to enemies within 3 yards. Before you hit level 20, mob tagging as paladins kind of sucks because the only thing you have is Judgment and Melee. Judgment has a cooldown, has a limited range. Melee is melee. If you have this though, and you run into a pack with a bunch of mobs and you get a proc, you'll in theory then mob tag those extra mobs. So getting Fiery Blaze at a low level will really help with mob tagging. Once you get up to ZF, I would recommend having spell power on weapon. That's another 30 spell power. Just from those two consumes plus the 30 spell power, you can be looking at 100 spell power right there, which is a massive improvement to Consecration. If you wanted to, though, you could also go Crusader at a lower level to get that increased strength by 100 for 15 seconds. It does have a scaling down effectiveness, though, so you could see minus about 4% per level below 60, and so in the lower levels, it won't be as effective. That's why I'd recommend Fiery Weapon, Fiery Blaze if you're mob tagging, and then Spell Power on the weapon at ZF. Lesser Block to Shield is going to be very useful for the lower levels, especially for mob tagging, because it's going to help you take a lot less damage. But once you hit ZF, you want to switch over to Spirit because you want that 9 Spirit to try to get your mana regen as much as possible. When you're in ZF, this 9 Spirit will equate to about 2 MP5, so that's going to add up over the long term of the 10-minute pool or so. Minor run speed on boots, always, no question. Minor run speed on boots. Technically, once you have Pursuit of Justice, you won't need it. You can get another enchant if you would like to, but I always just keep minor run speed on boots anyways. It's just always like having it in the back pocket. Healing power to gloves. Because of the healing power change with spell power, you can now get 1/3 of your healing as spell power. So that's what makes Redemption so good and things like that. So 30 to gloves will actually give you 10 spell power. Similar to bracers, 24 healing power will actually give you 8 spell power. So from these 3 enchants, you have right there 48 spell power already on there. At the lower levels, though, you don't really need the spell power. Rock 7 intellect to bracers if you can. That will give you 70 mana, which is a lot at the lower levels, and it should help a good bit. Major mana to chest, 100 mana there as well, and then superior defense, 70 armor will be very helpful. Shifting our focus over to add-ons to go through these real quickly. Rested XP we talked about before. It is amazing. If you don't want to get Rested XP, Questy is a great alternative to help you guys go through. Latrix Plus, Latrix Maps. Latrix Maps will make it so you can see zones even if you haven't been there yet, so you know where things are. Latrix Plus has a bunch of internal features that are really nice. Bagnon will help you clear up your bags a little bit. Auto Loot Plus will help you loot faster. Definitely recommend checking out my Loot Fast video. Classic cast bars or iterations are just going to make it so you can tell what's going on with mobs a little bit better, especially with dots and things on the mobs. Details is a damage meter. Dejunk will help you to clear up your bags, especially when you're in something like ZF doing those runs over and over and over. You want to get rid of Troll Sweat and the other things that are worth, copper. Get rid of those with Dejunk. 5-second rule is going to be really nice to be able to keep track of your mana per 5 ticks, especially at lower levels. You can kind of plan your cast around those 5-second rule ticks. Extended character stats will show you an extended panel. It's not as useful in Prepatch and TBC because you get more information from the actual regular panel, but in Classic it's very useful for the additional information you can get, and it will still probably be pretty useful in Prepatch. Item rack will allow you to switch your gear faster. Modern target frame, you probably don't actually need anymore. You know what, I'm going to get rid of this. They changed the way that you can see health and things like that, so modern target frame should be fine now. Neat plates, would recommend having this. This will show you a more clean kind of UI for the enemy nameplates. Nova World Buffs is going to tell you when a buff is going off, so if you're close to a city and you see that somebody's about to drop a head or something like that, don't run outside the city kind of idea. Omni CC will help you with keeping track of your cooldowns. Pally Power is very, very useful for any Pallies to basically be able to buff if you're in a group of Pallies to make sure you're not overlapping buffs. Talented is my talent screen where you can export talents and import talents to make it really easy to select the talents you want. Threat Classic 2, if you are doing dungeon grinding, it'll be really good to have. TomTom will help you figure out where to go for certain quests, especially if you're looking up a quest and it gives you like waypoints. That's TomTom. Weak Auras will allow you to import a couple weak auras. That will help make your UI and player experience better. And then What's Training will tell you in your spellbook what you can actually train soon. So for example, if you're looking when you get a new Consecrate rank, you'll be able to see that in your spellbook. Moving on to gear, I'm going to mainly be focusing on ZF farming. For the lower levels, just focus on your primary talents and make sure you have the Enchants that we talked about before. But you just want to focus on strength if you're going for ret, and you want to focus on intellect, spirit, and stamina if you're going for AoE farming or mob attacking. But when we get to ZF, we can really start thinking about the actual builds that we want to have, and we want to have as much spell power and spirit and intellect as possible for the kill phase. Running into there to the kill phase, I actually recommend a separate set of gear focused on stamina and strength. So just get, or stamina and intellect. So just try to get any kind of, of the eagle gear or whale or anything with stamina, just so you can get to the kill phase. Once you're in the kill phase, though, you really want to max out your spell damage, right? And so here we have 136 spell damage purely just from these items alone, not including any kind of wizard oil or any kind of potions or anything like that. Now, the way I did that was I focused on things like Dreamweave Circlet, Dreamweave Gloves, which have spell power, Dreamweave Chest, and I enchanted my weapon with spell power. I enchanted gloves with the 30 healing. And so you can really kind of focus on these, and I'll have all these potential sets in a Google Doc as well that you could just go out to and grab. Some of these items do require a little bit of a higher level, so right now it's 45. If we go back to 40, we're going to have to replace a couple pieces of the gear. But overall, you can see here, with what we have right now, we're able to run at 136 spell power and another 267 healing. So if you take the 267 healing minus the 136, you get 131 times 0.33 for the scaling. That means the plus healing additions give you another 43. So 43 on top of the 136 that we have gives us 179. If we have 179 and we include popping any trinkets and things like that, we're well over 200 spell power, which when you couple that with, I believe it's a rank 4 Consecrate that we'll have at level 40, that's going to pump out some serious damage. And so having this kind of spell power gear should really help to speed up your clears. When you can't get that spell power, just focus on stamina and spirit. Definitely spirit. So here I have spirit, spirit with intellect plus healing. Furin boots are great. Furin boots are level 39 boots with 16 spirit on it. So you can see that we're able to get a very good amount of spirit, which, as I said before, in TBC will give you a lot of MP5. That plus Blessing of Wisdom will be able to keep your mana up, hopefully, for the entire kill phase and allow you to burn through the mobs very quickly. Huge shout out to Karastom and Chillpunk who put together this guide. And this guide is incredible, guys. It is based on the Alliance. And so make sure you check to make sure you can do these quests. A lot of these early quests you guys are not going to be able to do on the Horde, obviously. Westfall is an Alliance zone. I'm sorry. But you guys can look into some more lower level quests potentially for the Horde, so you guys can do these as well. Basically, this includes all the different mats you'll need for each of these quests and the amount of experience you can get for each of these quests. Now, important thing to note is that you do not get experience anymore for multiple turn-ins. So for example, the Imperfect Draenei Fragment gives you 5,650 experience. Turning it in multiple times doesn't give you any more experience. But this does mean that you can stock up on all these items now leading into the pre-patch, so that when the pre-patch comes, you have all these items already available, already saved. Especially with the auction house going down, this is one of the main reasons why I wanted to pump out this video. I will have a link to this for all of you guys. Obviously, some of these are going to be Alliance, not Horde. Make sure you guys look for the actual quest to make sure you can do it on the Horde before you go buying these items. But these should give you a very good amount of just initial experience. You can see over here an overall 145,000 experience, which is almost a full level 59 to 60. All right, we have gone through everything, guys. We've talked about the specific tips for individual leveling strategies. We've talked about the various resources for enchants and things like that. Let's talk about the actual planned run. So this is my recommended run for solo strat: 30 lockouts, 50 lockouts, and 70 lockouts. This is going to be focused on maximum efficiency possible. And so, blend them as you need to, right? If you're going solo, I recommend, and I've said this before, highly recommend doing dungeons if you have quests. Don't do dungeons without quests because you're not going to get any extra experience or anything like that. But if you have the quests, they're definitely worth doing. So with that in mind, here is my actual mapped out zones to quest in at the various levels. I also included the talents that I would have along the way. So I built these out as ret until 40. After 40, after ZF, at 54, you can go over to Prot or ret, whichever you'd like to do. But I would highly recommend doing ZF at 40 to 54 and definitely check out the gearing guide because that should help you guys with that as well. But starting off with level 1, whether you get summoned out of the zone or whether you start on the starting zone, do that until about level 12. And then at 15 is when we get to our first instance with RFC. Highly recommend doing RFC. Make sure you get the quest though, guys. They're going to be incredibly important. So this is a solo strategy. Tool it to whatever you guys want to. Remember though, level 30 you get your mount. Don't forget that. You don't have to wait till 40. Level 30 you get your mount, which should speed up a lot of things for you. If we have 30 lockouts and you want to be as efficient as humanly possible, I would recommend a combination of mob tagging, boosting, and solo farming. Now, I got rid of the locations for the specific places I'm going to mob tag, but there's a bunch of different locations you can mob tag. I've done crabs, I've done the boars, I've done, Red Ridge Mountains. There's tons of places on the Horde as well. So any massive amount of mob density, if you want to mob tag there, it'll be great. If you have a hunter and a warlock friend, 2 would be great. Even if it's just 1, that's great. You can easily mob tag up to 15 very efficiently and up to 20 even. After 20 gets a little bit less efficient. This strategy is based on having a maximum amount of lockouts of 30 lockouts. So this is the idea of you want to get to 60 within a day kind of idea. If you have more time, stop doing mob tagging at 20 and go try to get boosts in SM. That'll be the most efficient way to level up. Questing will be fantastic though. So if you don't want to spend the money on boosts, the 2,000 to 3,000 gold, just go quest. Questing will be amazing. And I would highly recommend just referencing the solo strat for that. If you're going to try to go as efficiently as possible, I'm going to be mob tagging probably up to 32. At 32, I'll probably go over to Mara 500. The reason why I do 500 is to save the lockouts. It's not technically as efficient sometimes as the 340, especially with the 25-minute clears that it's probably going to take, but it will be able to get a ton of experience, almost a full level per run with 10 lockouts required. Once I hit level 40 though, straight over to ZF, have the gear prepped, have it enchanted, everything like that. I'll do ZF until I run out of lockouts. My expectation is that'll be about 20 lockouts, and to get to level 50, I might only get to around 48. We'll see, but that's why I included Searing Gorge as well. So Searing Gorge should give me a little bit of a buffer and move on to Ungoro. The Azara Journey, if you guys haven't seen the journey yet, YouTube Arleus The Journey, it is a combination of Quest and Azara plus the cloth tournaments, and they all basically combine in getting you previously 88,000 experience in about 15 minutes. So it's going to be about 120,000-ish experience now in about 15 minutes. It's incredible. Then you can go over to Western Plaguelands. Then at 55, it gets tough again. So there's a couple strategies I had here. First is mob tagging 55 to 60. Definitely a good option if you have a lot of people who can help you. 55 to 60. Alternatively, though, you can head over to Northern Felwood. Southern Felwood will be too low of a level, but Northern Felwood, you'll be able to get the quest and then roll those into Winter Spring. Especially if you did Ungoro before, you should have the turn-ins to turn into, I want to say, what, Denova or whatever, Southwestern, Winter Spring with the Lincoln Sword and things like that. Turn in those quests and do all of the quests out there. And then you can head over to EPL, Silithus, and then potentially Strat, Scala, Speed Clear from 58 to 60. Strat and Scala both have a ton of quests, and because Dungeon quests will give you a lot more experience, they're great quests to kind of burn through very quickly. You can also now solo Raz the Frost Whisperer over in Western Plaguelands, so that's, a big reason why we can get a lot of experience in Western Plaguelands, but also that will unlock additional quests for Scala. So this is going to be probably the way that I go about doing things. I don't know if I'm going to have, 20 people willing to mob tag from 55 to 60 like we had before when we were going for the world record, especially because Prepatch is coming out. So I just appreciate any help that I can get along the way. This is very mob tag heavy focused, and so you'll probably need, if you want to get all the way to 32 with mob tagging, you'll probably need at least 6-7 people helping you. So it's not going to be reasonable for every situation, but this is as fast as you could possibly go. If we have 50 lockouts, instead of doing the Scala and everything, we're just going to switch out the ZG boost. Most of the rest of the stuff is going to stay the same, but we should be able to get a little bit further in ZF, so I put it up to level 52 rather than 50. And then if we have 70 lockouts, you're pretty much unlimited to what you want to do if you mob tag high enough. Again, this is based off of one day. If you guys don't care about getting to 60 in one day and trying to go for the world record like myself, then take 2 days and you'll have plenty of lockouts, and you can do any kind of boosting you need to, or you can do solo dungeon grinding, or you can quest, and questing will be fantastic. But these are the recommended paths that I have. I have the talent builds for every single one of the levels, what I'll be running at that level. The gear is also, as we saw before, consumables, enchants, and any tips and tricks along the way we have discussed. So that is about everything, guys. If you have more questions, so definitely check into the stream, pop in, ask me any questions you have. I'm more than happy to help if I can. Hopefully this helps you guys getting to 60 as quickly as possible.